Celebrating 9 years of podcast excellence, the King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the Wrestling is Real podcast, because wrestling needs us.
Welcome to the Wrestling is Real podcast. This is King of Podcasts. Giving you a formal introduction to this program. There's a lot to cover. First off, the younger stars that WWE is deciding to go ahead and push right now, the reach for new stars. We have it right in front of us at Money in the Bank with the holders of the briefcases, and one of those briefcases being cashed in by Liv Morgan, who is now the SmackDown Women's Champion, and Theory, who is waiting in the wings about cashing in his Money in the Bank briefcase after having a short run as a United States Champion. So those two stars on the main roster is a focus. The spotlight is on them. And we need to continue to talk about the other stars that are still getting a spotlight now anyway on the main roster. And then we have to look at NXT 2.0 because we're getting to a point where we have to see if there's a point that the NXT 2.0 stars, some of them need to go and be made to be called up because of the lack of star power they have. And maybe just some changes up right now would really do some good for that brand. And maybe just for some other stars to get a chance to get up there, because with the way NXT 2.0 is set, they constantly have new names to come in. JD McDonough just came out now, and he's a new name to the mix. And they continuously introduce new stars anyway. So there doesn't need to be where certain stars need to be up in NXT for a very long period of time. If they're ready, they're ready. And that's what it comes down to. Now, I was interested in what Brian Alvarez said on the Wrestling Observer Live today, talking about the fact of how all those stars in NXT 2.0 are choreographing so much of their matches to the point that when they go to that main roster, the adjustments that need to be made on the fly at the last minute are going to be very cumbersome. And he talks that was kind of the detriment as to why so many NXT stars did not make it through. But see, I'd have to go ahead and jump in on that because of the fact that look at how many of those stars, maybe they also choreographed their matches before they came into NXT, because you think about some of the stars that were working in other organizations leading up to being here, because some of them are learning how to choreograph instead of just working on the fly and just calling into the ring. So some are not able to do that. I mean, some don't have the ability to do that. And I think you can see that it's not so much choreographed in AEW or at other organizations like in the Impact or MLW or NWA. You don't see it. You can tell everybody's kind of just working a certain style. Now, there's probably still some people that do choreograph because they've heard other stars that do the same thing. I mean, you think of Randy Savage, about him having to go move for move, choreographing all the moves for a 30-minute match at WrestleMania 3. We remember hearing that story with him and Steamboat. And that can be done, and if they're doing it right and they rehearse it, their match is going to turn out great, especially if the stars are very good and they're very adept and they can handle it. But when you look at the stars they have now, that are possibly going to go on the way up, and knowing that they're not being brought up in the same normal route that the other stars coming in, because in the Performance Center, the next in line stars are being taught in the choreographed style, and then they have to adjust, and some of them are not going to be able to go and make that adjustment. And will their promo ability be enough to carry them over until they get into the ring? Now, for some of the women, it might not be so much because the women's matches, very rarely are they getting that much time in the first place. So that's one thing. When it comes to the men's side, they need to be able to work longer. And even if they have tag team wrestling together and the time's kind of split up, it's still going to be a factor anyways. So when I look at how things are now, and why a Theory and a Liv Morgan were able to go and do very well adjusting to get up to where they are, because the wrestling skills are pretty sound and they are doing pretty good in whatever scale matches are being given right now, because they're given some high profile matches and they're not screwing it up. Theory has better promo ability. Liv Morgan has always been a bit stiff. And I mean, she's trying, she's better. I mean, she's still very much likable, so you can give a little bit of slack to that. But for her to be at that certain level of promo ability that the other stars that have preceded her, she doesn't have the promo ability of a Charlotte Flair, a Bayley, a Sasha Banks, a Becky Lynch. And Bianca Belair, for that matter, she needs to be at that level. Even Ronda Rousey, maybe now she's not the best. I mean, she's been better, but I think when she's scripted, it doesn't help her either. It really just depends on the opponent. But for the most part, you can see where promo ability does take you farther along. Alexa Bliss is better at promo carrying, even with the gimmick that she has with Lily. So you got those kind of things working for you. But the ones that are kind of stiff, they might still get some exposure, like a Dana Brooke or a Natalya. I mean, Natalia's okay, given the right situation. Naomi is definitely can do the promos if she needs to with what they give her. But, you know, we're looking at the in-ring work, and you'll see what certain stars, they've been given time and the chance to go, because she is being looked at a higher level than a Zelina Vega or a Carmella or a Nikki ASH or a Doudrop. I mean, she's at a level a little bit higher than those stars right there in the mid-card. But she's been in the mid-card for a long time. To me, Liv Morgan, she's kind of getting the Big E kind of push, where it's like that you deserve it type push. Not so much that she has done so much to wow the brass, to where she is such a great promo, such an over-the-top, amazing wrestler. I mean, she's good, but, you know, there is expectations they might have, and they're just trying to see if anything pans out here with her. And with the deal with Theory, it's a rocket on his back. There's a lot there, and he worked on Evolve quite a bit of time, and I know he worked at other organizations, other promotions, so he has the indie background for himself, and he was already pretty much polished and good in Evolve. You look at that 10th anniversary show, that's what got him up to the NXT dance in the first place, and then pretty quickly up to the main roster. And so far, he's been given what he's been given. He's loyal to the point, and he's a company guy. He is towing the company line. He's kind of fallen almost like that kind of like that Seth Rollins kind of feel to it. And I think Theory has done well given the situations that he has. Working and connecting with Vince McMahon into the set with Bobby Lashley, I don't think it was that bad as people might say. I don't think it was as bad as anybody wants to put it. It's just everybody's feeling like he's getting pushed down our throats, and like, why are we getting this guy to win like we did? And the other thing was the disappointment that Riddle did not get the briefcase. Instead it was Austin Theory, but the heel getting the briefcase is usually the much more sound play. We usually just prefer it. We usually just expect it. I mean, you see how they handle things when it comes to Money in the Bank briefcase and the heel's holding it. Look at how many times when Seth Rollins has cashed in and how well he's done. When you look at The Miz doing the same thing twice. When you look at, Baron Corbin, well, that was a different story. I mean, they were just people that would get those briefcases and the way they would handle things. Dolph Ziggler was another great example. But it's like, you just look at what they have here and what they're doing. And it's just, for me, I can appreciate what they're trying to do here and trying to build these two stars to be something. In the meantime, this is that barrier where SummerSlam is here, and they're going to have matches that are going to be some of the celebrity matches, which would kind of feel like with a WrestleMania show, typical of a stadium show for them, where you have Logan Paul in the celebrity spot, Pat McAfee in somewhat of a celebrity spot, or in a novelty spot, taking up slots. Brock Lesnar having to come back, taking a slot. Ronda Rousey taking a slot. And then what's the room for the rest of some of the stars in here? So you know that Theory and Liv Morgan are most likely going to get slots. They're going to be somewhere entrenched in the SummerSlam. What about the rest of the stars? Are any of them going to be included into this right now? Which is what I don't know. When I look at what the card looks like so far, I don't see where that's going to happen. But if we go ahead and just look at SummerSlam coming up, you got 3 matches that are already announced. So we know that Theory and Lashley are going to rematch. Most likely Liv Morgan will rematch with Ronda Rousey. And then you have mainstays that are taking up the other 2 spots so far. Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar last man standing match for the Undisputed Universal Championship. We don't know what they're going to do with the Undisputed Tag Team titles, but who the Usos will take on. I mean, who's the next opponent du jour that they can go ahead and take down and beat? I don't know. And what other stars do they have now that would be brought up? I mean, or they're going to have featured? Don't know. We could probably see what? I mean, just looking on Raw and SmackDown this past weekend, I don't know where the Mysterios are going to be, if they're even going to be involved in anything right now, but they put them in with the Judgment Day, and maybe that group will be something that they're going to deal with right now, but it's not like either of those teams are going to be going after tag team titles. It's just a featured tag team feud. AJ Styles dealing with Ciampa, would that be something they're going to bring up to SummerSlam? I don't think so, not right away. I mean, does Seth Rollins and Ezekiel become a thing here? Do we go to that next coming up? Where does Riddle get involved? Well, Riddle and Seth Rollins should be a match that we have featured coming up at SummerSlam, which that'll be a good match. And Riddle continues to be relevant while they're not going to give him another title shot right away, but they at least gave him just near the precipice of being in the title picture, going after Roman Reigns one-on-one and then not winning, which we got that part. But then what else do you have? I mean, Gunther has not been on a pay-per-view yet, right? Intercontinental Champion, not defending that title on pay-per-view. He's just been on SmackDown alone. And then who knows what else they do? I mean, Madcap Moss, are we going to worry about him coming up next? Will he be part of this whole mix, or is it going to be somebody else? I don't know. But the young stars that they have are not many, and they only give a couple of slots for certain stars there. Meanwhile, the bulk are just a lot of long time running main roster stars that have been up at that top of that card for a long time. So we don't know what they're going to do with that. I mean, Viking Raiders, you might get them into the mix here. I don't expect the Maximum Male Models to be anything anytime soon, okay? Massey and Mansois? No. Listen. I'm not even going to say anything, but, you know, it's unfortunate. Listen, Donovan Dijakovic that was Diomatic, excuse me. Mace being brought into this mix. Well, there are two stars that are they're not going to matter. I mean, the Maximum Male Models, that's just a gimmick. Like, I don't think anybody's going to be seriously taken advantage of on that main roster where those two are going to be anything. I mean, these are just former Retribution. Well, you got one person from Retribution, and the other one, Mansoor, who's just been kind of like left in the dust. Like they're just putting him into some gimmick because they just had this idea for a gimmick, and they could have just put anybody there, but they decided let's just put them here. And actually, I just kind of almost said T-Bar, and actually, I'm not surprised if T-Bar gets dropped into this group. I could see that happening. I'm just telling you, don't be surprised. And then I look at things and I'm saying, okay, there's only so many stars they put out for Money in the Bank to lead up to it. And then coming back into it, there's just not a whole lot there. I mean, you're not going to see Butch get put up to the front and center or Rich Holland being put up to front and center. They're both wedged into the Brawling Brutes. But there's not much young talent right now embedded on here. Now, they're still kind of going through the same issue of having some of the same stars together up at that main roster, and it's the same people we see on TV every week. But they're the only show that has that. They're the only promotion that has that. Meanwhile, everybody else has a variation of different stars that pop up every week on their respective television shows. But that's the way things are going to be right now. They could definitely use some more talent to come on board and give some room for some other talent to come in and be noticed. Because after SummerSlam, you're going to have to fill some spots. You're going to have to know that Brock Lesnar and or Roman Reigns will most likely not be on television for a while. Ronda Rousey, we don't know if she's going to be on TV afterwards, unless she's SmackDown Women's Champion again, or they do something else with her. I don't know. But when you see things coming back after SummerSlam, and then you have all those other pay-per-views leading up to Survivor Series, which doesn't make much of a difference, you could definitely see some stars from NXT be brought up after. And then you'll have the draft in October. You can also see some stars coming in after that too. So there's spots after the post-SummerSlam run and Survivor Series with the post-draft with the Survivor Series. You could see some new stars brought into the mix. This is where I think when you look at some of the stars that came in for the NXT's Great American Bash on Tuesday night and what they set up with that, you know, for the most part, I'm looking here, and when you look at Braun Breaker, pretty obvious. We know that Braun Breaker is destined for that main roster, but he did maintain the title. So he's going to hold on to that for right now. I don't know if they're going to do anything with he'll relinquish it by the time they go up to the main roster, or if he's going to drop it to somebody. But I don't see anyone right now that's destined to be NXT champion after Braun Breaker. I mean, there are stars they could go to right now that could be up for that mix. And there's, pick a name. Like, he's gone through a bunch of different names that they could have. Could Zion Quinn, could Tony D'Angelo, could Solo Sikoa. I mean, Von Wagner. I don't know. There are names they could go and bring up to the mix and see what they could do, but they put him through Grayson Waller. They put him through Joe Gacy, and they brought in, veteran talent like a Dolph Ziggler to come in as well. And so far, Braun Breaker is just, he's getting his work in, his ring work in. He's on TV regularly, and it's because he's going to get used to that when he goes up to that main roster. And it's not a bad time to bring him up pretty soon. Because I think you could put him up right now, and I don't know what you do. I mean, you could there's a number of stars you could bring in right now that could take him on. I mean, put it like this. They love keeping Happy Corbin around. What's the chance that Braun Breaker doesn't get brought up to the main roster, and he goes after Happy Corbin, and that might be a featured feud. You never know what could happen here. With Cameron Grimes, listen, I appreciate him as Trevor Lee, and the guy's got all the wrestling work. I just feel like he's just not in the right promotion. I mean, listen, I think his plateau is NXT. There is no spot for him on the main roster in terms of the size and even the To the Moon gimmick. I don't think it's going to make much of a difference when he moves up. He'll just be a mid-carder. And I think the NXT roster, you can't bring people up thinking they're just going to be mid-carders. You're just going to fill a spot on the main roster, which is what everybody else did for the most part. You look at Viking Raiders. I mean, except for a couple of exceptions to the rule. I mean, Bianca Belair is one of those exceptions because they kept her strong. Kept her high up on the card from day one. And she has deserved it, and she's done a great job. Given the time that she's given, she's a star, period. But then you look at, Viking Raiders or Street Profits that might not have hit that high a level. They're good talent. They can work really well, but the perception is they're not main eventers. Now, maybe the chance that they're going to try to split up Montez and Angelo Dawkins and Montez Ford is destined for a singles push, you could do that. I don't know where that works out, and if you're going to alter the character to be more standalone, much like they kind of had to do with Big E splitting off from the New Day. I don't know what you do there. So I want to see where that goes. But in terms of what they had on NXT, there was a discussion on Wrestling Observer about who are the stars you could think right now on the women's side that could be moved up right away. And I know Mike Sempervive had mentioned Tiffany Stratton, Roxanne Perez. You could definitely push up. And he didn't feel anything about Mandy Rose. And I think Mandy Rose, you have no choice but to push her up. She spent a lot of time down there in NXT, and they've repackaged her. She's going to be the same wrestler going up there, but I think the repackaging worked out really well. So bringing up Toxic Attraction as a full team, because we know Gigi Dolan and JCJ can go. Especially Gigi Dolan because, knowing her work was she was Priscilla Kelly. So I think their work together collectively as a group, that's a good team to bring on up and really cause havoc. And I think you could cause havoc right away to the SmackDown roster. The SmackDown roster could absolutely benefit from having Toxic Attraction now. And with Mandy Rose, you're just covering up any kind of flaws or any kind of imperfections with Gigi and JC helping out throughout. And having that trio work the way through so that she can go ahead and continue to move forward. I think that would be a great way to go. And if you have Liv Morgan hold on to that SmackDown Women's title after SummerSlam, that's what I think you bring up as Mandy Rose. I really do. I think that team comes on up there and you could do something with that. Now, what about the others they have? Diamond Mine, I don't see anything above mid-card for any of them. The Creed brothers, they look like a good team, but I don't know where they're going to go much farther because think of the tag teams they bring on board and how many they have let that have just been dropped. I guess still never forget how Authors of Pain were never given a chance Like, it was just bad. And then you think about tag teams they've had around that were mainstays that didn't have to go. I mean, Good Brothers, FTR, and you let those teams go. And I don't know. I just try to think here. And then like I said myself too, Roxanne Perez is destined for main roster. And I'm glad they're giving her all the chances right now. She won tag team titles with Cora Jade. Okay, that's fine. Roxanne Perez is the stud. She really is the standout right now in that women's division. And that's just based on what she's done in the past. She has been consistent coming up to the NXT roster here, out of Ring of Honor. The pedigree is there. She's great. And she's going to do really well in that main roster. I think you just give her a chance and just let her be that story that comes on up. And I mean, really just super babyface with her. She could do really well. And I hope that is the chance for her. As for Tiffany Stratton, I mean, with her, I mean, the ring work is not bad, but I think the looks alone, I think Bruce Pritchard and Vince McMahon and all those guys, listen, they're a bunch of horn dogs because they're going to want her and Nikita Lyons up as quickly as possible. I really believe that. And with Nikita Lyons, she's still young. So, you need time to see where they're going to go. But, yeah, I could totally see Tiffany Stratton being brought up right away. Right away. And that's some of the names I see. And other than that, Wendy Chu, I can't stand the character. I know people like her. I can't stand this character whatsoever. It's meant to be annoying, kind of like how Asuka is right now and her character, but I guess it works. But I really didn't feel much out of this. And when it comes to Carmelo Hayes, I don't know yet. I don't know what to think yet, but I think Carmelo Hayes needs some other feuds to continue to go forward and let him hold on to this North American title again, because of course he lost it from an injury and had to go and vacate, right? So give him some more time this season and just keep working him down there, keep getting him up there, and then let's just see if they decide to go move forward. Because with Carmelo Hayes, I mean, the gimmick's there, and I see where the appeal is. I'm just not totally into it yet. And then the D'Angelo family, listen, I mean, people can appreciate all they want, but doing this Sopranos type mafia gimmick now on that main roster, the Tony D'Angelo character is mid-card at best. I don't see him as a main eventer whatsoever. He is doing an imitation. There's nothing that feels sincere, legit, or with any real depth. I really don't care about him with the legato and kind of bullying them around. I don't care for that. I don't care for the henchmen he has either. Stacks or Two Dimes. I don't care for them either. I don't get the appeal over Tony D'Angelo. I mean, he's good in the ring and he's doing an imitation, but I don't want an imitation. Can we do something where he can be himself, come up with his own kind of things, which is the part I don't see what they're going to do. Plus a mafia gimmick, it's outdated. Nobody's doing mafia movies at all. Nothing's doing at all with that. There's got to be something else to do with him. But the mafia gimmick is what he probably wanted to do. And now we're here, and I'm like, it's just not going to go anywhere on that main roster. I don't see main event in Tony D'Angelo anytime soon. I don't see it, so why bring him up there right away? Unless you do something more with him. And remember, there's been other stars in the same way that I felt like, well, you brought him up from NXT, and then it's like, wow. EC3 never got a chance. That's beside the point. And let me tell you something. For anybody that thought the Velveteen Dream was going to go somewhere before he got himself all mixed up and, with underage girls, I never saw anything with him. I saw him go down the same. I imagine he would go down the same route as Adam Rose or Tyler Breeze or Fandango. I felt like they were just mid-carders, just these gimmicks that were fun to watch at NXT, but that there was no thought process of is this going to be good for the main roster? And there's more of that kind of thought process now from the younger stars there. And we just have to see if anything's going to happen where we're going to get something come off. Pretty Deadly, for tag teams, sure, bring them on up at some point, I guess. Briggs and Jensen, I mean, we could see some more with them, but it's still too new for them. We really can't look at them and say much of anything right now at all. Wes Lee, I want him in another promotion. I don't want him in NXT anymore. Can we just send him back to Impact, or can we put him somewhere else? Because I want Wesley to go ahead and be open and free to be able to do his work. And without Nash Carter there, he's kind of lost. And it sucks because Desmond Xavier, he's good. I wish he was somewhere else. But hey, listen, they both took the payday. And then, Zachary Wentz decided to go ahead and he had his issues that came up and everything kind of went bad, and that sucks. And then I look and I say, okay, and there are other stars that, do they need to get some more rub off of being in NXT and coming back up? Because we know that there have to be some veteran stars that work with the younger stars down there from time to time, which is what the old NXT did before. And you've had Dolph Ziggler make a trip down there. Finn Balor in the black and gold days before they went in and made the switch to the rainbow. And now Apollo Crews is down there. And I'm saying to myself, they want to go ahead and put Fabian Aichner or now Giovanni Vici here and put him into a feature with Apollo Crews. Maybe it's just for a match, because I guess Apollo Crews wants to go and work across the roster. But with Apollo Crews, man, they just messed things up with him. Teamed him up with Titus. And then the Nigerian gimmick, which is like, oh man, they don't know what to do with him. And it's not even that hard to go and put him out there. Because Apollo Crews, I mean, what a great pedigree coming out of the Indies here. But they just don't see the appeal here. I mean, I feel like Apollo Crews and Cedric Alexander are under the same, cut from the same cloth. And that's unfortunate. Because if Apollo Crews was anywhere else, he would be excelling. And I'm not saying he can't excel here. It's just that there is a barrier. There's a glass ceiling. There is a point of, you can just tell which stars that they have in NXT or on that main roster that are going to go to a certain level. And then sometimes out of nowhere, you might see that maybe there's something more to it. Who knows? Maybe. But I'm looking at what they're having here, and some of the women they have right now don't do much for me. Kaden Carter, Katana Chance, I don't see them lasting. I just see them kind of staying their welcome at NXT and never making the main roster. I don't see that team at all making that main roster at all. Tatum Paxley, no. Ivy Now, not either. Anything with like an MMA type background, I don't see it. And so these are kind of the things that I look at here, and I just say to myself, man, they're just not finding it. Solo Sikoa, Von Wagner, yeah, I see main event potential with them. Zion Quinn, I'm not sure. The jury's still on him. Braun Breaker, we know, destined. And Jamie McDonough is small. Like, he's got a great look, but he's small. And when I look at what they're going to do, to see him move up, I mean, it's tough enough for any stars that are not American or from North America anyway. When you have people that are from Europe, they're going to get pigeonholed. They're going to kind of get put into a stereotype where you see where Sheamus and Butch and Ridge Holland are put together into a group because of their association. Or when you had Wade Barrett along with Sheamus and Alberto Del Rio with the League of Nations, remember? They're all going to put whatever. Or like the Bar. Like, there's just going to be, let's put the European wrestlers together. Let's just clump them together. Like, I'm actually surprised Finn Balor's not part of any of these type of groups whatsoever. And he's been left alone to stand alone. But McDonough here, they're going to put him here. I mean, the promos have been good. The intro promos for the new character have been good. But like I said, I mean, doesn't matter what NXT UK does and the kind of level of wrestlers you have over there. They have to be sports entertainers. They got to be able to be looked at for main roster potential. And how many of them do you have right now that are? And to me, like I said, I could totally see on the men's side, yeah, Braun Breaker, eventually Von Wagner, but you need some more time down there. Solo Sikoa, absolutely. Like, those are 3 stars right there. I absolutely see will get called up eventually. And those are good stars to work off of. On the women's side, yeah, Roxanne Perez, Toxic Attraction, there's 4. And then I say Tiffany Stratton. Like, there's 5 right there that could be moved to the main roster too. And, there could be some spots that might open up. You never know what they're going to do. And you never know if the draft's going to make any changes either. But this is where I look at things all together, this whole picture of the new stars they have at the moment. Now, there's a couple of stories that came in that talk a lot about, I want to take a couple of samples of what's being said in the press, the dirt sheets of what they're saying on the decisions of having Theory and Liv Morgan brought up and given that spotlight. Because we know there have been other stars they've had. Bianca Belair is a success. Remember when I talked about WrestleMania last year? And I said there were certain stars that were given a focus, a spotlight. Let's see what happens with that. Omos, it remains to be seen. Like, he's still being pushed hard. They're going to do the best they can. It's a big guy. They got to get him over somehow. They're going to try their hardest. So you got him. Riddle has been focused for a long time, and I think he's been a success so far too. So I give credit to them for being able to do well with Riddle and Bianca Belair respectively. I think they've done a great job with both. I never thought Riddle was going to do so well he did. I thought, if he was going to stay the same gimmick, but they have moved him off from the goofy gimmick, the scooters and all this stuff. They got rid of all that stuff right now. They're still doing this stuff with him with the giraffes and all these different things that are flying out of his flip-flops. That's fine, whatever. But he's legitimate now. And you might still have the goofy stuff that he does once in a while talking about Randy, but you can just tell they're evolving the character, and that's the right thing to do with him right now. So I appreciate that part. And like I said, Bianca Belair, it was just, you just had magic in her. Everything that you could want. And how can you not love this woman and what she brings to the table as a star? I mean, I love it. And you never know. They might be able to get something in a bottle where, some other stars. I mean, maybe when Rhea Ripley comes back, we can see something out of her when it comes to the Judgment Day gimmick. We never know. And Liv Morgan, with this opportunity, I don't think she's going to drop the ball, but I want to see more out of her. Something more of the promo ability to give me some pause and says, you know what? She has everything all together and it's working out. So I want to see a little more of herself some way, somehow here, because I want her to get over. Like, I'm not judging the fact that she can't. I want her to get over. It's not like I'm trying to judge and try to put down. I want her to do well. I want her to succeed. And honestly, I want Theory to succeed a lot. I see it. I can see what they're trying to do with him and where they can go with him. There's something about him that works. And he's spewed with confidence. And his gimmick is good. I don't feel cringeworthy with him. He kind of gives me Miz vibes. And, when I look at Miz, I'll tell you, man, I always underestimate him sometimes, even though I do like the Miz a lot. I like the character a whole lot. The heel character that he is very good. And I just don't know how you're going to get Logan Paul to be the face in that match together. I'm really curious what they do. But you know what? When Miz is called upon, he excels, man. He really does well. With all these celebrity things that he has to go into work on, he does kick ass, man. I got to give him credit. And Theory can go a lot of places. So let's go ahead and go to a couple of stories that talk about it. First of all, I'm going to go to Deadspin and Eric Bloom. So first of all, he talked about Liv Morgan and that she signed back with WWE in 2014. And you remember, she worked with the Riot Squad for a long time. She was part of that single storyline when it came to Lana and Lashley and, Rusev, now Miro. And remember all that part. That was that whole love triangle thing going on there, which was still an interesting storyline. I mean, I did enjoy it. It was a train wreck as hell, but I thought it was kind of interesting anyway. And I think it kind of didn't hurt Bobby Lashley going the way over to doing the Hurt Business and that whole setup to get him in a real spot to really excel once again, much like Drew McIntyre. Hey, rehabilitation of characters where Lashley and McIntyre come back from runs in Impact Wrestling and they come in here and they excel and they are now bona fide stars once again, always able to stay up near that main event spot as needed to. Cody Rhodes was going to be the same thing. And actually Cody Rhodes had the potential to be even higher up on that potential than Lashley and McIntyre were. Just saying. And you never know what other stars might come off a contract that might be able to be called back. Because I'll tell you something. When I look at what's going on now, I'll be honest with you. There are a couple of stars I look at that I wonder if they'll ever get called back and they might be given a chance to go under contract again. Not so much in AEW, but, you know, like a name like a Matt Cardona and what he's been able to do outside of the indies, working with NWA, with Impact and, you know, GCW, and just looking at what he's done. I could always see Matt Cardona coming back. If the time came about, maybe he doesn't want to go back, but I could always see where never say never comes into play. I don't say that about Brian Myers, not right now anyway. But, I mean, seeing Matt and Chelsea together and putting those two where they're called back into WWE to the main roster, I mean, I could see it happening. I don't think that's outside of the scope of possibilities. I really think that. So there's always some names they could always try to go ahead and reach out to if they become free agents once again and say, hey, come on back over. You never know. So I'd always keep an eye on them. And I don't know if there's anybody else, I guess. Not so much on the women's side, unless, I'll tell you what, if they're, you know, and I'm so happy that Camille still continues to stay in NWA and she's still women's champion and she's holding the Burke and she's fantastic. But man, could Camille ever be called upon to go to another organization? Could she ever get that call and say, hey, you know, could I ever see her go over to that organization? Maybe not so, maybe AEW, but I think, and by the way, I got to make mention of this too. Now, I haven't talked about Ric Flair's last match, but I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. Somebody needs to go and get Camille, or let's get some women's matches on that card, because I don't think we have any on that card yet, do we? As far as I know, I don't think we do. Oh, no, we have one. We have one women's match, but I would love to get one more if on there, if it was possible. Just saying, for that card, which I'll talk about that in a few minutes. So there's been an overwhelmingly positive reaction to Liv Morgan's victory, which is great because it really solidified her and put her on the map, because I don't think anybody was thinking that she was going to win the title. Not in the fashion it was, but it's the way that you to have her win flat out and not let it be through this Money in the Bank briefcase cash in. I think this was the best route for her to go. So, I mean, they kept her in the limelight into the end of last year, somewhere in the mix leading up to WrestleMania time. And, you know, she was never out of the spotlight. I mean, she was always kind of in the picture. And so seeing her here and getting this chance is great. So it's good. And then you have Theory, which he talks about here, at 24 years old, by the way. He's a worthy competitor. He worked at the independent circuit at WrestleMania weekend 2018. He can work. Liv has a clear-cut personality, he says here, and then Theory has his selfies. And then the question is, you know, is he more worthy of vaulting up the card than every other male Money in the Bank ladder match participant? That's okay. If he's handpicked and if he goes up there and he excels, good. But I think there is something there. There is an if factor that can be there about him. There is a diamond in the rough. He's no MJF, all right? But I think there's something there. And there's just some stars that you can kind of tell there's something there that might really stand out going forward. When I think about MLW and I say, well, Alex Hammerstone has a lot of upside to him, and I'm glad where he's at. But I'll tell you one star that I would always want to keep an eye on is they're going to have the Kings of Coliseum paper, or the Kings of Coliseum special for MLW coming up, and the World Heavyweight titles on the line, and Richard Holiday is facing Alex Hammerstone and the whole dynasty bit. Don't sleep on Richard Holiday. Don't sleep on him. I think there's something there with him that people need to keep an eye on. I'm just saying. And it's amazing what stars are out there that have not been found anywhere else. Like, I mean, I'm still surprised that Kevin Cross, or now Killer Cross, has not been picked up by anybody else. And that there's stars that control your narrative that are on their own way with Braun Strowman, or now Titan and EC3, that are just they're off to their own thing, and that's it. Like, that's the other thing I'm surprised, that those guys are just on their own and I don't hear a lot about them in other organizations. Don't even hear about it. But I would not want to sleep on that. And I would think, well, MLW just got a couple of stars that just really stand out to me, and I think you just got to keep an eye on. Just saying. EJ Nduka, the judge, is also, why WWE let him go? I don't know, but I think that guy's got an upside with him as well. And there's something about Myron Reed that is a real standout to him. I don't know what it is, but he works. He works in the role there. And I understand why he was the standout of Injustice after all was said and done, and Jordan Oliver and Coco Brazil will let go. I can see that part too. And then let me tell you, Jacob Fatu, fantastic. I don't know where that guy has not, I'm surprised that Court Bauer's been able to hold on to some of the guys he has. It's incredible, because it would be something to be said about how MLW has certain stars that are brought in, and just the appeal they have right now is fantastic. Like, I really do enjoy MLW immensely, and I don't even get to talk about it, because you know what? I don't think there's that many people that talk about it or watch it enough to like relish in it, which is unfortunate. But anyways. And so we know there's been things going on in the background with Theory where, he was on the reigning roster, then demoted, then brought back up, and everything right now is, they're talking about the story there that pushing new talent is something that WWE should always do. Your roster is large enough that 2 world championships exist at once, no matter how much you love Roman Reigns. And Liv's time as SmackDown Women's Champion should be celebrated. Theory's eventual cash-in shouldn't. So people are down on Theory. That's one story that talks about it. Let me take another story from New York Post and the regular column from Joseph Stasiewski. And that he says that Liv Morgan finally had her well-deserved moment. She'd only won the ladder match, but cashed in the contract. And that with Theory and the way they used him at Money in the Bank, he's saying that it feels again like WWE is ducking the Money in the Bank winner being a threat to Roman Reigns. Theory is more likely to cash in on the babyface who defeats the champ. Right. Because I don't think there's anything we're going to wait for there coming up. But they have to figure out what they're going to do with that anyway. Like, are they ever going to split the belts? Will that ever happen again? I don't know. But I'd like to figure out where they're going to go with that, because we should get some kind of idea that there's a chance of that. For the fact that Brock Lesnar or Roman Reigns are champion, either one that wins, it really is a non-factor, because you're still talking from part-timer to part-timer. It doesn't make much of a difference. So that's the other thing you have to worry about here, is what they're going to do. And we don't know if Liv Morgan is going to hold on to that belt for long, because if it's Rousey declaring a rematch clause and she wants to have Liv Morgan at SummerSlam, then maybe that title run's not going to be for long. But maybe there's a chance they could do something more where Rousey will get another opponent. That's what I'm hoping for. If Bayley returns. If Shayna Baszler could be primed back up to be a potential opponent for Ronda Rousey, I mean, that's a great match that's never been put together. And they could do that if they would decide to go and put that apart. But I don't know if they'll ever do that. It would suck. So I don't know what to think right there and what they want to do with that. So that's what he's talking about here. And with Theory, having Theory Mr. Money Bank is not the problem. It's how it was done. The champion he would have cashed in on is. Telegraphing your winner in any match is never a good thing. I've done it twice in the past 3 years. In the men's match with Brock Lesnar making a shocking return to do so in 2019, and Theory being added as a late entrant this year. His victory itself makes sense, but what does it become past this moment? Theory feels like zero threat to cash in on Reigns, but does like he could do so to who finally beats the tribal chief. And it could create an instant feud with Cody Rhodes or Drew McIntyre unless Theory pins a babyface in a triple threat scenario. And what does feel logical is John Cena somehow thwarting Theory's cash-in attempt to set up their eventual match whenever that may be, because we need to see what happens there. It's not so much where, Theory has a prop now. That's one thing they're continuing to do. Okay, the U.S. title's not going to be on him, so he doesn't have that to hold on to. But now he has the briefcase to hold on to. So it keeps him relevant, which is what they were trying to do with that Money in the Bank ladder match anyway. Because the only person you also thought that could have been the briefcase holder would be Seth Rollins, which would have been a third time, or Riddle. And they chose to go with Theory. So who knows? So we'll leave it there and we'll let everything kind of pan out. But the younger stars, that whole thought process, we have a good idea of where they're going with it. And I'm still holding out hope to see that everything kind of works out well overall. Now, next few minutes, I want to go ahead and talk about a few other things that are brought up here. Next I want to bring up is Paige, or Saraya Jade Bevis. And she put out a story, which I have here in the Players Tribune, playerstribune.com, where she writes, "It's hard to say goodbye." And she puts an open letter about her no longer being in the WWE. So tomorrow's my last official day as Paige. I'm just going to highlight through some of the story here. I mean, I can go ahead and read through, but there's a lot. Well, there's not a whole lot to say. I mean, we can just try to read through it real quick, and I'll just kind of just glom through it. So she got signed in April 2011 at 18 years old from Norwich, England. And as I'm sitting here now, I'm only a month away from turning 30. I've been Paige for over 11 years. For my entire adult life, I've been with WWE. And while I've changed a lot over that time, I almost forget that she was that young in NXT. Man, the raven-haired beauty that still is Paige. And man, those first few years, loved her in NXT, really loved her on that main roster, especially when she became champion. And just the way that all worked out was really great. And while I've changed a lot over that time, one thing feels the same to me today as it did back on the day I tried out. The thrill of those three letters, WWE. And remember, if you never watched the movie that she did, that was featuring her life story, that was really good. And I would always say go back and, take a look at that. Wrestling for Fighting with My Family. That's the movie. I would definitely, if you have not watched it, I'm sure most of you have, but the story was really well done, and Florence Pugh did a great job as Paige. Just saying. So she says, "I've known this moment would be coming for a while, but it almost didn't seem real. But now that it's real, though, I'm just overwhelmed with gratitude. Gratitude to people like AJ. What an absolute badass she is, but she's also so sweet and so thoughtful." And then the Bellas she gives a gratitude to, saying, "Who took me under their wing when they definitely didn't have to. The business has been the most encouraging place for strong women, and I admire how Nikki and Brie just came in and said, you know what, fuck that. The Bellas empowered me. Then they taught me how to empower myself." And then she gives gratitude to all the women that she ever shared a ring with. While there are a million pieces to being a WWE superstar, in the end, it all comes back to wrestling. And whether it was my matches with Natty, my favorite opponent, or with Emma, or Tenille Dashwood, forever proud of what we did in NXT, or countless others. And while I wish the same support had been given to earlier eras of female wrestlers, to WWE's credit, they did come around on what our group was capable of. So many had our backs and gave the tools to succeed. So she talks about Stephanie and Hunter, obviously Dusty, Dr. Tom Pritchard, Norman Smiley, Joey Mercury, Steve Kern. Nothing was handed to us, but it felt like anything was possible. And she was very fortunate to do what they were able to do. And she's also grateful to the current group of wrestlers in WWE. Everyone seemed to have a different idea on where or when our women's evolution started, but to me, the where and when don't matter. What matters is that it did happen. And the women's wrestling is in good hands with the talent on this roster. Incredibly honored to have gotten to be a part of something so special. Can't wait to see what the future brings. And Paige is part of a great crop of women's wrestlers in WWE. And it's really unfortunate that she never got to go ahead and continue her career as long as she did with all that happened to her. It was really unfortunate. I mean, the thing that went out going on with the iPhone footage that got out released and got leaked, stuff like that. And then all the stories that came out with her, with Alberto Del Rio, and all these things that were going on that were just did not help at all. That was unfortunate. But it's because of that women's revolution that she was a part of that it normalized, and it definitely put the credibility up for what WWE validated, that women's wrestling needed to be an equal portion of what people were watching because of what happened in the last decade. It's because of that women's wrestling now has an importance as much as the men do. And it wasn't like that before, but now more than ever. In the last decade, it wasn't so much WWE. It was finally they got on the bandwagon after Impact Wrestling did. Let's just be honest, okay? Impact Wrestling was first to really stand out with the Knockouts division, and that was, case in point. But then it changed with NXT and the stars they had coming in. And remember, Paige was FCW before NXT, right? That's how far back she goes. And so all that there's a lot of credit to her, what she did and what she contributed. She would have been one of those pillars, very much one of those horsewomen right now today, if not for what happened to her, which is very unfortunate. But she's in a better place, and that's what's most important. And she even gotten to the point about being close to the bottom. Talking about it was almost overnight. So many things changed. Suddenly my neck was fucked. I couldn't wrestle. I popped a drug test. My sex tape leaked. I got depressed. I started drinking. I became less of an asset, WWE, and more of a liability for a long time. I'm sure of it. But they never lost faith in me. They never once threw me off to the side. They got me the help I needed when I needed help. They gave me the time and space I needed when I needed time and space. And they even gave her a full segment on Raw to announce her in-ring retirement. I'll cherish that for the rest of my life. So I'm glad that she's going to go out on these terms, and that's good for her. It's a farewell. And all I can say, I only hope for the best for her, for Saraya. So let's hope for that. Speaking of farewells, we got coming up July 31st, Ric Flair's last match. This card is stacking up to be incredible. This is almost as good as any AEW or Ring of Honor show. I mean, really, Jim Crockett Promotions of all things right here, booking Ric Flair's last match, because the stars you're putting together that are coming out for this event, it's just dynamite. I mean, it really is good. Really, really good. So we do not know who Ric Flair's opponent's going to be coming up. I know we all heard about Ricky Steamboat, but that never happened. So the match is still to be announced. We don't know if it'll be a tag team match or a singles match. We don't know yet. I'd almost wonder if Jay Lethal, who's been training with Ric Flair for the last 3 months or so, if Jay Lethal was the opponent, or at least they would do something where they'd have him in a match. I actually would like to see Jay Lethal maybe be the one to help do this. Of course, I mean, it would make sense if it were Sting, and it could still be Sting, but I'm sure he's going to ask for a lot of money. So I'm taking Sting or Jay Lethal as the potential opponent for Ric Flair, hopefully. And as for Ric Flair being in this point of his career, he didn't want to go out in those terms in WWE in 2006, and I agree with him. I wouldn't have wanted to go on either. I think he still wanted to go, but the company, Vince, was able to convince him, listen, let's do this match, and let's retire you. And man, that was fun. I mean, I'll tell you, it was really incredible the way they sent him off. And he could have gone, but you know what? Look at this, 14 years later, some odd, and he didn't care, man. He wants to go back out in that ring. He wants to go, because he wants to do it not under WWE's guys, because he was not a WWE guy in the first place. He got a great run several times in that company, and he's grateful to Vince for that, for everything that Vince has done. But I think going under Jim Crockett Promotions one more time and building this together, I think is wonderful. I'm actually kind of surprised at Jim Crockett Promotions. I'm surprised that Billy Corgan has not brought out any NWA types into the card here. I'm surprised that none of those stars have been brought over here anyway. I'm kind of surprised by that. Because it would be nice to go and see like Nick Aldis out here, or Trevor Murdoch, or, something like that would come into play. I would like that if it was possible, but maybe not. Either which way, the card looks great. Let me tell you, when I look at some of the matches they have, okay, Josh Alexander, Impact World Champion, going up against the former MLW World Heavyweight Champion, Jacob Fatu. That match right there, that's like a dream match to me. I think that's a fantastic match we're looking forward to. I can't wait to see those two roll it up, because that looks amazing. I didn't think we would ever get that match. Thank you, Ric Flair's last match, for putting this on the card. What a fun match that'll be, man. Wow. Then you got a three-way match, the Knockouts champion, Impact Knockouts champion, the new champion, following Slammiversary, Jordan Grace, who just finished up, with a strong win going up against a rematch with Tasha Steelz at Against All Odds. We go there. By the way, if you want to hear some of the post show I did for that, I did that during the Money in the Bank post show, WrestlingIsReal.com from this past Sunday. So take a look for that if you want to listen to it. I did a little bit of a post show commentary on Against All Odds about that. But Jordan Grace is going to be defending the Impact Knockouts title against Deonna Purrazzo and Rachel Ellering in a three-way. Wow. Hell of a match there too, man. That's good stuff. Then you got AAA / Impact / AEW type stuff going on where you got Rey Fenix versus Laredo Kid versus Black Taurus versus Bandito. That's another fantastic match. Then you have, wow, you got an old school Impact Wrestling feud with the American Wolves, Davey Richards and Nate Edwards teaming up for the first time in, how long has it been? Wait, hold on. When's the last time these two actually got together for a match? Because that's really amazing. As we know, Eddie Edwards is now leading up Honor No More. And Davey Richards has been working over in MLW for the last year or so almost. And seeing that, so yeah, 2017 is the last time we saw them together. That's going to be a hell of a Motor City Machine Guns who are back working together down in Impact Wrestling. That's going to be a hell of a match. And let me tell you, man, another match on this card, the Von Erichs and the Briscoes. Man, you just can't, this is just candy right here. What a pay-per-view, man. This is incredible. I really love this right here. And then we have Clark Connors against Ren Narita. And I don't even know so much about him because Clark Connors, I know we saw him at AEW's Forbidden Door, and he's good. Don't get me wrong. And I don't know anything about Ren Narita, but he had just recently signed to New Japan Pro Wrestling. And he's part of he was part of the stars of the NJPW dojo. So now he's brought into place, which is good. And he's getting himself out there. So that's a fresh young New Japan star along with Clark Connors. That should be a hell of a match. And Killer Cross, accompanied by Scarlett Bordeaux against Davey Boy Smith Jr. Damn. This card is packed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Maybe they could put 2 other matches on the card, maybe something like that. But man, let me tell you. I don't know if we're going to get Ric Flair in a Broadway. They're probably giving a long match. Especially if it's going to be a last match. I imagine he's probably gearing up to do 20, 30 minutes. I would not be surprised there. But these other matches are, really cream of the crop, man. I love this card. This is fantastic. And I will do a post show I'm going to do a post show for Ric Flair's last match. Just count on it, man. Learn to love it because that's the best thing going today. What a hell of a pay-per-view. Sunday, July 31st. This looks great. I just hope the production value stands up. And that's the only thing I'm hoping for with that. And so that's what I'm hoping for here. And that it'll stand out. And so they'll have it on Fight TV, I see. And I'm looking to find out how much the card's going to be. I don't know if they've given us a price yet. Yeah, it doesn't show anything about what they're going to have in terms of the price of the card. So I want to find out what that's going to be because I'm going to go ahead and I'll probably pluck down to that. It's just, what a hell of a card to have, man. So we'll wait and see what goes on with that. But again, July 31st, I'll keep an eye on it. And also there's a StarCast going on as well, which people are going to really, really into. And you know what? You can watch the whole weekend now for $200. Man, who's going to pay for that? Wow, that's crazy. And by the way, Shawn Michaels actually did comment about Ric Flair's last match because he was the one that retired Ric Flair in the WWE in 2008, 20-minute match that they did. And he discussed this on the True Geordie podcast. He's backing Flair, for whom he never joked it's ever over. Quote, those of that know the Nate are always, kind of tickled. It's never over for the Nate. That's one of the things that makes him who he is. I want Rick to be happy. And if he get in the ring, if getting in the ring one more time, Rick knows if he can do it or not. Rick knows if he's healthy enough and if it's something that brings him joy, brings him commitment, I wish him the best. End quote. So good to see that right there for him. Good to go and see where there is. One last thing before we wrap things up. Ring of Honor's Death Before Dishonor. That's the week before, Saturday, July 23rd. So, of course, I'll do a post show for that on that Saturday. And for that, so far, we have 2 matches announced. Ring of Honor Television Championship, Samoa Joe versus Jay Lethal, and Wheeler Yuta versus Daniel Garcia. That's what we have so far. And so, other than that, I don't know what else they have so far left, but the end of the month is looking to be quite interesting. So I'm really glad to see all that. Good stuff so far. And that's the show for this week. Thanks for listening in. Catching the show as you always do. Make sure to go and subscribe. Rate and review this show. Please do that. And come back for another Wrestling is Real podcast, because wrestling needs us.
Thank you for listening to the Wrestling is Real podcast. You can find all previous episodes at wrestlingisreal.com or subscribe to the show on all major podcast outlets, including Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Follow the King of Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at King of Podcasts, and search King of Podcasts on YouTube, or type youtube.com/JBRASCO951. This has been a presentation of the King of Podcasts Radio Network.